Before and during the American Civil War, several innovations in infantry weapons would change the face of warfare. New firing mechanisms, developments in ammunition, and other mechanical improvements made weapons even more accurate and deadly, contributing to the staggering death toll of the Civil War. Throughout this podcast, we will discuss the transitions and innovations made in infantry weapons during the American Civil War. Before discussing the specific innovations in weaponry, it is important to mention the industrialization that made mass production of weapons possible. Infantry weapons were manufactured on a massive scale before and during the Civil War, making the Civil War one of the first large-scale modern industrial conflicts. One of the most famous and prolific sites for the manufacturing of weapons was the Springfield Arsenal. At the beginning of the war, the factory in Springfield, Massachusetts, was capable of producing 1,200 rifles annually. By 1864, the Springfield Arsenal was producing 300,000 weapons annually. The famous Springfield rifle muskets were the most widely used weapons of the war. The first innovation that will be discussed is the transition from smoothbore to rifled barrels. Before the mid-1800s, muskets and other shoulder weapons had smoothbore barrels. This meant that the barrels were simply smooth tubes, without any features. They were a simple vehicle for the round to travel down all the way to its destination. Gunsmiths learned in the 16th century that by creating helical grooves along the length of the barrel, the weapon would impart a spin on the round as it left the barrel. The spin of the bullet flying through the air meant that the bullet would fly farther and be much more accurate. However, because of the difficult process, rifled barrels did not become common or widespread until the Civil War. The most common weapon of the American Civil War, the United States Rifle Musket Model 1861, also known as the Springfield Model 1861, had a rifled barrel. At the beginning of the war, the Confederacy was armed mostly with the smoothbore percussion musket model 1842, but as they realized the vast superiority of the U.S. Springfield rifle, they captured thousands and made their own version of the weapon. Another innovation of the Civil War era was the development of new firing mechanisms for infantry weapons. In wars past, the flintlock musket was the weapon of choice. A piece of flint was inserted into the hammer of the weapon. When the flint and the hammer struck the steel of the pan, the sparks ignited a priming charge, which in turn lit the charge inside the barrel. Even in the Civil War, with weapons in short supply, some troops were still armed with the United States Musket Model 1822, the last flintlock musket in service with the United States Army. However, the true weaponry innovation of the Civil War would come in the form of percussion weapons. Although the percussion cap was invented by a Scottish clergyman in 1805, it was not used in military weapons until the years leading up to the Civil War. The United States Percussion Musket Model 1842 was the first American weapon to use a percussion cap system. Percussion caps were small metal pieces inlaid with detonating powder that were placed in the nipple of a weapon. The hammer striking the outer surface of the cap caused the powder to explode and ignite the charges inside the barrel.
When people think of the ammunition used in early muskets and rifles, most think of the classic musket ball. Early shoulder weapons fired basic balls of lead that did nothing to help with the weapon's accuracy. Around 1850, a French military officer named Captain Minier invented a round that would greatly improve a rifle's accuracy and range. The idea was to create a round with the accuracy of a rifle that could be loaded in the weapon as rapidly as a smoothbore round. The Minier bullet, as it would come to be known, was a cylindrical bullet with a pointed end and a hollow base that to a certain extent resembled the bullet shape that most of us are familiar with today. The bullet was created to be slightly smaller than the bore of the weapon. When the powder charge went off, the force pushed into the hollow base, causing the bullet to expand against the rifling of the barrel. The first American weapon to adopt the Minier bullet was the U.S. Rifle Musket Model 1855. It was chambered for a .58 caliber Minier bullet, the same round that would become the standard in the Springfield Rifle Model 1861, the most commonly used weapon of the war. In the years leading up to the Civil War and during the Civil War, another major stride in ammunition was made. The metal cartridge, the same type of ammunition used in modern firearms, was being developed, which would eliminate the need for paper cartridges and rapidly decrease reload time. However, metallic cartridges did not see widespread use until very late in after the Civil War. The final major development in weaponry made during the Civil War that we will discuss was the development of carbines. Shoulder weapons of the Civil War era were notoriously long, most measuring anywhere between 4.5 to 5 feet, or even longer. The weight and unwieldy nature of these rifles did not suit the needs of rapid deploying mobile cavalry units. A carbine is a smaller, lighter weapon, usually a shortened version of a pre-existing rifle. Soldiers using carbines sacrificed range and muzzle velocity for weight and ease of handling. One of the first widely used carbines of the Civil War was the Sharps carbine, which was developed in 1848. During the years of the Civil War, the U.S. Army purchased over 80,000 Sharps carbines. In addition to the shorter barrel length, the Sharps carbine also featured another major development in weaponry. It was a breech-loading weapon, meaning that cartridges were loaded in the breech near the firing mechanism, rather than by ramming them down the barrel. This meant that the Sharps carbine could fire at a rate of up to 10 rounds per minute, 3 times faster than a muzzle-loading rifle. The most widely used carbine of the Civil War was the Spencer repeating carbine, patented in 1860. By 1864, the Spencer carbine had become the standard weapon of the Federal cavalry. The Spencer fired from a 7-round tubular magazine that extended into the buttstock. The Spencer fired copper rimfire cartridges at a rate much faster than any other weapon. The Spencer was a major contributing factor in the vast superiority of the Federal cavalry over their Confederate counterparts in the later years of the war. The Civil War was the first modern industrial conflict. The developments in infantry weapons that we have discussed all contributed to the death and destruction wreaked by this divisive war. If you would like to learn more about Civil War weaponry and see some of these weapons in person, pay a visit to the Virginia War Museum.